Welcome to the podcast. We talk about all the things that are hidden in the shadows. This is Isaac.
Oh, you almost skipped over me. Oh my gosh.
I was looking to you. I fill in a blank.
And this is Megan.
All right. On this episode, we don't have any haunted updates, do we?
No, not really. It's just the same stuff.
Got a lot of things coming up though.
Yeah. Whew. Get a little bit antsy, a little bit anxiety based when I look forward to September and October because there's so much going on.
Now we're recording a lot of bonus episodes.
Mm-hmm. Roundtables, investigations,
Yes.
Halloween episodes.
Yes.
Tons.
We got a long time friend of the show, Chaz of the Dead, episode that I recorded with him recently.
Yeah.
That's coming out next Wednesday. We talk about some alien and spooky stuff, which seems to always be the go-to with him. It's like ghosts and aliens are always hand in hand with him.
Yeah. He always has some cool insights
Yeah.
and like some mind-blowing stuff, and he's interesting. You've done a couple Instagram lives with him.
Yeah.
So he's pretty cool.
So look forward to that episode on Wednesday.
Yup.
Next week, which I can't think of the date in my head.
7th, I think,
yeah.
I believe. Don't hold me to it, but I believe it's the 7th.
And Thursday, when you're listening to this, whether it be in the morning or afternoon, depending on when, a live thing, right?
Yeah, live interview on Creeping It Real by Ellen. I know it's a funny but a really cool title for a show.
Yeah.
And we actually gave her some evidence that we captured. We haven't captured a lot of evidence because our investigations have been limited. But Isaac's going over there to talk mainly about the Shadow Walker Paranormal team and some stuff that he has experienced and we've experienced as a team. But it's just going to be him on that episode. But if you go to Eleanor Wagner's YouTube page, that's where you'll find it, as well as I'll post a link in our stories for you to be able to go listen to it and stuff like that. So
Got that going on.
Yeah, that'll be cool. I think the only other live interview we've ever done, well, I'm not doing this one, but live interview you've ever done was the one with PETA, remember?
It's rant. We kind of talked about stuff.
Yeah, that was a cool one.
But moving on to other things. Today's episode is a continuation of last week's episode.
Yeah.
Which this episode has a lot more proof behind it.
Well, the government said that they did it. Like, this is...
Well, not to the extent that so-called conspiracy theorists.
Yeah, that's
put
true.
Shit out there with. But no, we're talking about MK Ultra today.
Ooh.
Now, this is a conspiracy theory that is based on some facts, so it does give us some validation. Though a lot of conspiracy theorists have run wild with it.
Yeah.
But it also has ties to the maturing candidate and all that stuff as well.
Yeah. It's like, it's because researching, it's like MK Ultra is the subject, and then you have all of these other like side experiments that took place, and then also branched out or like conspiracy theories based off that. And we'll touch on some of the conspiracy theories because there's a lot that could come from the actual like fact-based stuff. So ready for it?
Yes.
Okay. So what is MK Ultra? So MK Ultra basically was a government CIA ran human experimental program that essentially led to hundreds of studies and experiments that revolved around mind control, featuring the use of LSD and other drugs for mind control, information gathering, and psychological torture. The project went from 1953 to 1973. So when you think about that, that's 20 years.
Publicly is when they say it ended. It could still be going on right now.
Yeah, and there's a theory.
Put that tinfoil hat on.
Yep, there's a theory about that I'll share at the end. But yeah, so 20 years of doing this. So you could just imagine, and similar to MK Ultra, a lot of the people, there was some volunteers, but not a lot. The government kind of just ran wild with it. Like as I progress and tell you some of the stories, it is literally like. It started out with some sort of structure, and then it kind of just went rampant, and there was tons of abuse. So that took place within, and it started off as like people would volunteer, and kind of like MK Ultra. I mean, not MK Ultra, but Montauk Project. They would get like runaways or orphans or people that like there was
or what they call derelicts, which I never knew what that word meant until after I started research on the Montauk Project. Because I've heard it used as an insult, like, oh, you derelict. And I was like, what does that even mean? It means like unwanted person, like you're homeless, but you're like in the worst ways.
Yeah. Like anybody that doesn't have any ties to like family or whatever, so they could basically do whatever and there not be any like repercussions.
No one's looking for them.
Yeah, exactly. So what actually took place in 1975, there was actually a congressional investigation into what happened between 1953 and 1973. So it didn't really say like what had like the ruling on anything was. It was probably just like swept under the rug, like kind of like everything kind of is with that. Because what are they going to do? Like put the whole CIA in jail? Like, because there was a lot of people involved with this. But what originally sparked the idea for the MK Ultra was in the 1950s, during the height of the Cold War, U.S. intelligence had gotten wind that potentially the Soviet Union, China, and North Korea were experimenting within their own countries about mind control and stuff like that. And it's supposed that the U.S. government grew worried that eventually they would use U.S. prisoners of war and do the mind control and like send them back to the States. And then they could, because the way they have it is they wanted to where like there was some kind of clap or word or something that would take the person out for a second and they would be able to control. And that also kind of goes in with one of the theories or conspiracy theories that they think is going on with certain people. I'll get into that a little bit later. But so with that mindset, in 1953, the head of the CIA, who was Alan Dulles, I think that's how you say his last name, decided to approve the program. And that's basically how MK Ultra essentially came about. The idea of using LSD and other drugs was to develop techniques that could be used against enemies to control human behavior while using the drugs and other psychological manipulators. And just like the Montauk Project, I gotta make sure to put the K at the end and not Ta. Montauk Project. And this is that they literally broke your mind down. So the same kind of concept. And another thing to keep in mind as we're going through this is that MK Ultra techniques were supposedly used to wipe the memories clean of the people that worked for the Montauk Project. So in timeline wise, think of the 1950s to 1973. This was when MK Ultra, mind control, all of that was dealing with. Philadelphia Project was before, and Project Experiment was before. Then came MK Ultra, and then following MK Ultra was the Montauk Project, if that did actually happen. So that's kind of the timeline you're looking at. So like I said, there was over 150 experiments that they know took place that involved drugs, paralytics, and electroshock therapy. So for those that are listening that don't know what paralytics or electroshock therapy is, paralytics is the complete or partial loss of muscle function. So, I guess it's kind of like people zoning out, like how like everything is stopped, is what they kind of wanted to happen when they would mind control, if that makes sense.
You think about when you zone out, like I've done it by driving, like my body's still driving, but my mind is like miles away.
Yeah.
And then I come back like, how did I not get in an accident? How did I keep going? It's basically because your mind is mimicking exactly what needs to happen. So if driving seems to be the number one spot where most people zone out, or at work, or you're staring, or you're talking to someone, right? It looks in your face that you're talking to them, but you're like,
somewhere else,
somewhere else, imagining this or thinking about that, and like all of a sudden you come back like, oh crap. I guess the original process was that if they could do that on command and send that person's consciousness away, and the body's still there, and then implant the other consciousness to take control at a snap of a finger, a command, or even like a flash of a light or something like that to activate them to do what was programmed in that moment.
And when we start talking about conspiracy theories kind of towards the end, you'll kind of understand where this comes into play. Another thing that they did was electroshock therapy. So you hear that term electroshock therapy a lot when people talk about like abandoned asylums or something like that. They talk about what took place in the psychiatric wards, which was electroshock therapy. And electric shock therapy is the psychiatric treatment when a generalized seizure is electronically induced to manage refractory mental disorders. So this procedure is done under general anesthesia in which small electric currents are passed through the brain, intentionally triggering a brief seizure. So that was kind of like what took place to kind of break down the mind. And it's done in psychiatric wards regardless, to kind of, if you have a mental disorder, to again break down your mind.
Yeah.
So, and that's honestly where a lot of the bad mistreatment came from. So kind of like the Montauk Project, like they would take you from one extreme to the next, like starve you, overfeed you, like the same thing that we were talking about in the Montauk Project episode, they kind of did. So technically they did it first, and it kind of morphed, it transferred over to the Montauk Project. But if you notice, a lot of these experiments and projects and stuff like that, they start off with like kind of some sort of structure, and then it turns, like people get almost obsessed with, like the doctors and stuff almost get so obsessed with it, start going down the wrong way, and it leads to a lot of abuse towards the end of the projects. Montauk Project was the same way. It started out with some sort of structure, and then it just went down south real fast.
Well, it got destroyed by a Demogorgon, but
well, yeah. So with the Montauk Project and MK Ultra, the main difference is that basically the government said, yes, we did do MK Ultra, versus the Montauk Project, where it was just repressed memories of Preston Nichols, and the government said, no, we didn't do this. So which kind of makes me think maybe they said, no, we didn't do this because they got investigated by the Congress for their MK Ultra. So then they were like, you know what, we're still going to do this, but we're going to keep it a secret.
Yeah.
And after doing the research, I really contemplate, I bet you they still do it today. Somewhere.
I mean, there is evidence of it happening all the time.
Well, here's the crazy thing. So again, I keep doing it, but another difference between Montauk Project and MK Ultra is MK Ultra was done in universities, was done in psychiatric wards, was done like in the open, versus Montauk Project, which was in like a secretive location and like hush hush. And that's the main difference. And I think because the treatment towards the end was really bad, and you're going to actually hear a quote. I'm going to share with you guys a quote that one of the CIA agents said to one of the doctors, I believe. And it's really bad. Like, it just literally sums up the whole abuse towards the end. So yes. Okay, so another thing is, unfortunately, according to an article by history.com that covered the whole MK Ultra thing, very awesome, they state that the majority of the MK Ultra files are non-existent due to being destroyed in 1973. Why do you have to destroy files if there's nothing to hide?
No one must learn our mind control techniques.
Yeah. So it was either destroyed when the program was halted in 1973, but apparently their overall record keeping wasn't that great. So this was like I said, MK Ultra, imagine like a huge umbrella of just side projects that they took place. And I'll actually discuss some of the side projects on our Instagram. So if you want more on this subject, go check that out after this episode airs. But there was a operation or a project, and this is a great example of how they basically took some people that didn't openly say they wanted to be part of the program and started experimenting on them. And because it was kind of like mind control and stuff like that, they couldn't remember, especially when the hallucinogenics kicked in. So there was an operation called, which I don't know why the the immature version, or not immature version of myself, but the immature Megan thinks it's freaking hilarious that the name is Operation Midnight Climax. I don't know why I find that so funny. I read that and I was like, haha. Okay, so this project included the government hiring prostitutes to lure men into what was known as a CIA-based safe house. These safe houses were where certain experiments would take place, and the men would be dosed with LSD, and the CIA would watch behind a two-way mirror on the men's behavior. Majority of these experiments were conducted in the San Francisco and Marin County, California area, as well as New York City. Apparently, this is where the darker stuff amongst the MK Ultra stuff got super dark. Because there was limited oversight and little control over what actually took place in these experiments, really bad situations occurred. In fact, an agent named George White wrote to Sidney Gottlieb. I don't know if I'm saying that right. Probably not, because I have a tendency of butchering names. But was an agency chemist and poison expert on the MK Ultra project. He was also super obsessed with finding like mind control. Like he was obsessed. Like it was an idea and then it became obsessive to him. But so he was, like I said, he was an agency chemist and poison expert on the MK Ultra project. And he wrote this, and this is just bleh. He said, everything was fun, fun, fun. Where else could a red-blooded American boy lie, kill, cheat, steal, deceive, rape, and pillage with the sanction and blessing of all highest? So that right there shows what took place amongst the experiments and stuff like that. So, yeah. Huh?
No, I was agreeing with you.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So with that being said, that's exactly why in the late 70s there was a congressional investigation into this. That's just one operation of over 150 that took place. So that sort of pretends just how intense the whole situation with MK Ultra was and how totally backwards it turned within itself on the experiments. So next question kind of is another weird. Oh wait, sorry. Skirt back. Okay. Another weird thing that I found out was that a lot of the experiments and more into the paranormal aspects of everything was funded. The CIA was funded studies at Columbia University and Stanford for effects on these drugs and all the experiments that they were dealing with in the MK Ultra, which I think is unique because you really don't hear about the specific universities that kind of were involved with it. But like I said, like this took place in various areas. So basically wherever they kind of studied medicine, that's where kind of MK Ultra was kind of like leaked into. So the mind controlling part actually worked. They would basically load patients up with LSD, torture these people close to death, and then use that trauma-based mind control. And they basically found out that by doing this, you can actually give a person a split personality disorder. They put a new mind into the void is basically their approach to what they were able to achieve as far as mind control goes. So that's so creepy. Could you imagine? Mm-hmm. That's just the government took this with the evidential hope to be able to do this and program someone to become an assassin. They basically wanted to create people that would kill on command and be able to control them.
Sleeper agents.
Yeah. There's even a theory that with Charles Manson, that there were some experiments dealing with him that took place because apparently he was in prison at a place that they target. And that's another thing, they targeted prisons and criminals and stuff like that. Again, people that didn't have, like if something happened, it wouldn't matter. Well, it matters, but you know what I mean? Like there wouldn't be people that were searching for them.
And the government wanted to learn how to manipulate and control people. They would probably study Charles Manson and how he was able to do it to groups of people. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And that's another theory is they think people, and this is kind of far-fetched, and I'm sure anybody into true crime will tell you it's very far-fetched. Not giving an explanation for anybody that kills, but that was one theory, is that they were thinking that people that do these mass murders, like serial killers, they are mind controlled. Because you know how a lot of them say they don't remember, there's no remorse, like that kind of stuff. That's what but there were serial killers before 1950s. So you can't really, that's kind of a whole, you can't really, so here's one of the kind of conspiracy theories that runs wild on TikTok is celebrities glitching. And one of the main things that they talk about that they feel, celebrity, the bigger you are, the more the government wants to be able to control what you say and what you say and think and feel and all that stuff, right? So there's a lot actually. And one of them, I watched them and they're kind of creepy. Not saying that this is real. This is all conspiracy theory. This part is up in the air. So MK Ultra did exist and there is evidence and stuff like that. But the thing is they like where mind control is being used right now is what's kind of up in the air, and there's no real answers. There's just conspiracy theories, if that makes sense. So, there was one, the guy, I think his name is Al Ricker, right? Roker. Okay. From the Today Show, where it's him and two additional co-hosts are outside and behind them is a crowd. The other two co-hosts, who was a male and a woman, were to the right, or to the, if you're looking at it on the screen, they are on the right and he's on the left. And they're laughing and carrying on with the segment. And you start to notice, what's his name? Al Roker? Roker. I don't know why I have a problem with that. I put Al Rickman here, so I was totally wrong.
Al Rickman. Professor Snape is not here.
Okay. So Al, what's his last name?
Roker.
I don't know why.
You want me to tell it?
No, Al Roker starts acting off. Like, you can see. Huh?
Okay, I watched that clip like before we were talking about MK Ultra stuff, right?
Yeah.
They're talking about the weather. And granted, you're too young to know, but I watched Good Morning America when I was a kid, right? Because that's what my mom would put on before you go to school and stuff like that. So I saw them, the whole team there for a longest time, especially when Al Walker was fat and then he got skinny over time, and the whole thing, right? But they were just talking about something, and Christmas time was coming up or something. Yeah. And she says, Holy Ghost, right? All of a sudden, you see him turn.
Holy Ghost. Why that?
I forgot what sentence was, but basically, Holy Ghost was the trigger word. And you see him freeze and turn at the camera and look and stare at the camera for minutes without blinking or changing expression.
Yeah.
Just that. Like a solid look of like,
and it's like there's
eyes wide and just staring at the screen, and then they had to go to commercial, and then when they came back, he was fine. But
and it's crazy because there's like no movement, and that's where the paralytics like kind of like makes me think, because literally like he was still, like it was like complete stopping of all body movement, even blinking. I don't even think I saw him blink, but it was like complete other than breathing, he wasn't moving.
Yeah.
And that's crazy. But another person the one that was the weirdest one I've ever seen. Now, obviously, people can have like, you don't know because they don't really, it depends if they share it or not, but there's obviously people that have maybe medical issues or mental disorders or something like that could potentially cause them to glitch out or just be awkward. Like, I'm an awkward person. I can zone out sometimes with messages, stuff like that. Like, I get messages and it's just like complete stare. But there was one that it was Stranger Things. It was, they had won an award or something.
Oh, you think we're Winona Ryder?
Oh my gosh. Yeah. I looked at it and I felt so uncomfortable. I was like, oh, something's up with her. Like,
or she's just being a weirdo.
Yeah. I mean, that's possible because I know she's had some issues before, but that's weird. They were at the stage and the guy, I forgot his name, the guy that plays Harper. Hopper. Why I said Harper, I don't know. Hopper.
His name is in my head somewhere.
Yeah, it's like an easy, it's like a typical like
Yeah.
actor name, but like I can't remember it. But he was on stage and he was they won some award, I guess, best TV show or something like that. And she's next to him and she looks like terrified and she's looking back and forth like super fast and making these weird, just jolty movements, and it's very uncomfortable, very weird. So like I said, like it doesn't mean she's mind controlled, but
Oh yeah, typical Boston name, David Harbour.
Oh,
That's his name, David Harbour.
Okay. Maybe that's why I call him Harper, because I get Hopper and Harper.
Yeah.
But another one was which I didn't find her stuff like too bad, but like apparently Cardi B does it a lot. Like there was one.
She did it at a live interview on the red carpet. She also did it on an episode of The Breakfast Club. But that one, The Breakfast Club, was the most evident because you saw the call sign or the signal for her to snap back. And it was funny because she was talking about finances or something like this. All of a sudden, you just see her stop mid-sentence, turn her head in a weird like puppet like jerk, and just like look at like stare off like with like basically like a major malfunction in the brain. Like if it was a robot, like right?
Yeah.
And the guy that was talking at the time said the same thing 3 times, but he clapped his hand each time.
Yeah, I thought that was weird.
So he's like
gift card.
one,
No, it was
2,
gift cards.
yeah.
Gift cards, gift cards, gift cards.
And he said basically 3 times in a row. But he said, "Get the gift cards, get the gift cards, get the gift cards." And he's clapped his hand 3 times. With a gift card or clapping in 3 was her trigger to come back. But the second he did that, she snapped out of it and she kept continuing on what she was talking about.
Yeah.
But it was weird that she stopped mid sentence and did that. And then also live on the red carpet, her interviewing someone. That happened again. She froze and just stared off, and then I guess someone tapped her or something happened, and she basically came back out of it, which is like, it reminds you essentially of Get Out. You never saw Get Out, did you?
No, I haven't seen that movie.
But a whole mind control thing was to basically cut out someone's mind out of their own head, essentially, and implant with somebody else's mind in there as well. But the trigger thing would happen essentially that she, the mother, would spin the cup and make the like a certain sound that would basically cause someone to basically just like faint and be unconscious. But the way to get someone out of the mind control was a flash of light, like from a camera, and that would bring the original person back.
That is so crazy when you think of it. Because when you think about that, because you kind of go, okay, well, how does that tie in with paranormal stuff, right? Well, not necessarily ghosts and stuff. Well, you know what? If you're messing around with that, couldn't something sneak in too? Because your mind's in the void, essentially.
Yeah. Maybe there's a lot of celebrity MK Ultra stuff that's out there that people you can easily look up on TikTok or something like that.
Did you see the one with Eminem where he says, "Get out of my mind," right? He's in an interview. He turns and goes, "Get out of my mind," right? And you see him like glitch, like literally he's just staring at the screen and he goes, "Okay, I'm better." And I'm like, I don't know if that was like played on or what, because he's kind of like not weird.
Eccentric, but not that weird.
Yeah, I don't know. You never know in that like realm, so I don't know, but it is creepy. And it's always too, sometimes when they talk about certain stuff, I forgot, one of the celebrities was talking about something that was kind of like sketchy, like about like, I guess Hollywood or whatever, and they glitched and, but another really,
they say when they go, basically it's like when they start talking about something they shouldn't talk about, a fail safe in their mind basically stops them from talking about it, and they come back and they forget why they were talking about it in the original place.
So
it's almost like a protection protocol.
Yeah, it's so weird too, because okay, you take the stuff that took place at MK Ultra at the different universities and stuff like that. Obviously, there had to be people that died. There had to be people that were in such a low vibrational state that literally. And then working in that environment, if you were just a worker there, could you imagine? So,
original fear of why the government did it in the first place was the fact that Russia was doing it as well. And Russia was sending sleeper agents to America through everything, anywhere, anyone, right? And then they couldn't tell who was that, and that would cause fear. It's like, well, we have to know these mind control techniques. We have to send our own. We have to send our own people there. We have to learn how to break these mind control. All that technique was what originally installed them and do it, and probably a lot of curiosity of how the mind works and how they can control it. But I guess the motivational thing on the surface was Russia's doing it. We got to do it too.
Yeah.
But probably had their own, alternative motives.
And you can't tell me they started that and didn't finish on it.
And they're still doing it.
I feel like maybe they stopped, and then if the Montauk Project was a thing and actually happened, they were like, "Oh crap," when they kind of like messed up with that. But we live in today's society, and I just feel like there's more. I said in the Montauk episode too, I don't know if the Montauk Project was actually a real thing or not, but for sure, without a doubt, I mean, they do stuff like
mind control and getting someone to do what you want is a tougher technique. That's why you have to essentially break the mind in order to do that. That's how soldiers work. They break the mind down to be able to obey commands without question. That makes a perfect soldier. It's not to the full extent of what they did, but essentially it's like a lower, like sugar-coated version of what they need to do. But for people to have full control, basically you say a word, they snap out and they pull a rifle out and they kill somebody, and then they kill themselves. Maybe that's the original plan. Like a father of three, worked construction his whole life. All of a sudden, he gets a phone call from a number he doesn't recognize, answers it. A phrase is said. I'll see him stop. He walks to the store, or walks to like a Walmart or someplace, picks up a rifle, buys ammo, drives to a certain place in town, picks a gun, and sees someone like a politician or somebody who needs to die, assassinates them, puts a gun to his head, shoots himself, dies.
Yeah.
No explanation, no like that, and a lot of things that happen, like no one knows why he did that, stuff like that, and then news media makes up stuff about why he did it, like he secretly had this in his computer, he planned this for months. They can easily fabricate a story to explain why this person did it.
Yeah.
Oh, he was disturbed, like a fake friend. Oh, he was disturbed sometimes. He has some crazy theories, You can already see the whole procedure and plan in place.
Yeah. Well, here is, so obviously it's hard pressed to kind of find experience stories for people that went through MK Ultra and seeing how nobody really remembers because they would wipe your mind, or just being under that amount of drugs, they wouldn't. But there is a woman that I found. Her name is Ellen Adkin. If you look up MK Ultra, she is known as the MK Ultra girl. She basically, you see her strapped in a hospital bed with all this stuff on her. And this is basically the darker story about the magnitude of what the MK Ultra project did. And this is her kind of retelling. I think she's been on some podcasts and stuff like that, but kind of like she wrote, I think she tried suing I don't know if it went through or not. I couldn't find if it did or not, but basically she went after a psychiatric ward that all of them were part of, all of her family were part of, and apparently the MK Ultra stuff took place there. So this is what she says. She says now she believes she has to come out, and she has said that some of part of this, as well as her family, had died under she was one of the only survivors of her family from stuff that was being done. There are people, of course, that, try and debunk her story and say she's lying. But she was probably one of the main ones that have came forth from the MK Ultra. According to Ellen Atkins, she was the only member of her family that survived all the experiments they were put through. She referred to the CIA at the time as a form of cult and said they repeatedly targeted her family. At the time, her mother and father were patients of Dr. Erwin Cameron. He had practiced at the Allen Memorial Institute at McGill University in Montreal, Canada. Am I saying that wrong?
Montreal, Quebec, Canada.
Yeah. On a website.
Where's Coldy?
Oh my gosh. On a website called mkultragirl.org, she explains her story and explains they are working on 2 class actions against the mistreatment of the non-consensual persons. So I guess like all the people that were not consented, were not volunteers that had to go through these experiments. She had said that her sister was drugged, electroshocked, and psychologically tortured at 16 years for having possible bipolar disorder. In 2015, she began diving deep into everything when she found a photo on the internet that had been tagged MK Ultra Girl. She instantly recognized herself. From 1957 to 1964, Scottish psychiatrist Donald Cameron was paid $69,000 to travel from New York to Canada to perform MK Ultra experiments at McGill University. Apparently, he used depattering and psychic driving experiments. Apparently, Cameron would drug his victims to sleep for weeks on end, only to wake them up with electroshocks to the brain. Patients lost all or part of their memories. Some lost the ability to control their bodily functions and to speak. After he would turn them childlike, he would strip them of basic skills such as learning how to dress, and then apparently reprogram them by bombarding them with recorded messages for up to 16 hours at a time. First were negative messages about their inadequacies, and then positive ones. Apparently, he would get his patients to listen by putting speakers in football helmets and locking them on their heads. They would go so crazy they would bang their heads into walls, so he then decided to put them in a drug-induced coma and let them listen instead. Alison Steele, who was mentioned in the article, whose mother was admitted to the hospital in 1957. Her mother was 33 years old at the time and had bad depression from their first child. From the first thing, I think the first child died, but I'm not sure. Her mother was put in a chemically induced sleep once for 18 days and a second period for 29 days. That alone, I feel like, is bad. Like, if you don't need to be, like, obviously she didn't need to be in a coma.
Mm-hmm.
So I can't just imagine. I mean, that leaves opportunities for even darker stuff that's around to mess with you.
Yeah.
I mean, if you're looking at a paranormal side of things. She was put through multiple rounds of electroshock and injections of experimental drugs and endless bouts of recorded messages. According to Steele, who was 4 years old at the time, they attempted to erase her emotions and strip her soul. That's crazy. That gives me chills when I hear that. Just that line. Eventually, at the end of all this, CIA agents were able to successfully mind control many victims, tons who were children's. All the victims' senses were driven to extreme heights. And one of the things I found interesting was that a hypnotherapist was actually covering this on TikTok. And one of his videos, there was a comment that asked him, does he still believe it's going on? And he made a point that I thought was interesting. He said the problem is, to answer that is hard because they don't declassify projects until 30 or 40 years. So there's no, if they're doing it today, it wouldn't be available today.
30, 40 years from the 70s should be around today, right?
Yeah, but if they're still doing it today.
Oh, yeah, that makes sense.
And they said just using hypnosis doesn't cause problems, but the fact that they use like LSD and the total just like breakdown of the mind and everything like that, that's where the causing of problems happened with the MK Ultra.
Yeah.
So I could just, these poor people. So not only are you having, I mean, the fact that he made them, I mean, those people had to get put in such a low vibrational state and then to be messed with in terms of mind control. I mean, 150, you think how many people that was? 150 experiments over 20 years. There easily had to be, if you have one person per experiment, that's 150 people alone that went through that.
And who knows who there are.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's just
Many black eyes on this nation, but a lot more farther, darker things that have never been or make the light of day.
Yeah. And it's just one of those things that, you know, you could start it's a big rabbit hole to go down because, like I said, it's MK Ultra, and then you got 150 experiments that took place. Like I said, if we ever find out any more information, or if we read more on the Montauk Project and some stuff arises, who knows? Maybe we'll do a part 2. I wasn't really interested in the Montauk Project or MK Ultra until I started researching it. Now
I told you.
Yeah, and now I have like so many questions and so many things. And I didn't even touch this. I didn't even scratch the surface. I didn't even scratch the surface of all of it. So there potentially down the road could be a part 2 to this.
Yeah. Well, I think that covers most of it for today.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So next episode, even though this one is being released in September, this was the last episode of September.
August.
Of August, yeah. See, I'm already like zooming forward.
You wanted to be Halloween so bad.
Yeah. Oh my gosh.
Yeah.
I literally, I love pumpkin, and I liked it before even like it was like a thing to like pumpkin. I've always been obsessed with like anything like not cinnamon because you're allergic to cinnamon. So, even though, yeah. So, but, yeah. So I had my first pumpkin spice coffee, and it touched my soul. It was so good. Oh gosh. Okay. We're going to get on a random tangent here about pumpkin flavors and all the Halloween stuff out. Ooh, I'm just excited for when I start seeing the pumpkins.
So next week is
the astral plane, and this is this is probably one of my favorite topics to talk about, other than like kids and the paranormal and stuff like that, because
astral plane, the ether, the further, the other side, a lot of names.
Yeah, and a lot of encounters of like what people have experienced, and kind of like what a lot of people have experienced on the astral plane. Like, I kind of want to go diving into the stories too about how like people have accidentally said in their dreams, this is a dream, and like they've had weird stuff happen. We kind of mentioned that in prior like dream stuff, but I want to go back into it. And then apparently there is some places that I've been to that others have been to on the astral plane, and I don't have contact with these people, so how can we be going to the same spot if it doesn't exist on the astral plane? Yeah. And maybe even dive a little bit into how I get messages on the astral plane. So
I had a lot of people get messages on the astral plane. But yeah. Speaking of such, new information has been brought to our attention, which is in more depth about the Shadow Walker ability. That will most likely have to do with Shadow Walker Part 4.
Yeah, it'll blow your mind. It was a download that I got.
Yeah. So we're going to go study more on that, and then when we get more information about how to properly share it, then that'll be a part of the Shadow Walker Part 4 episode. Yeah.
And then also, I don't know if it's going to be September or October, but I have actually been asked to do a kind of like a Shadow Walker series, but on my abilities and like what I go through and how I deal with it, and kind of like the coping stuff that I do with certain things. Because we've been getting a lot of people messaging in about abilities and stuff. So, yeah, I got asked by a couple people to cover myself, my abilities, even though I talk about it sometimes in this, but to talk more in depth about like everything that I kind of go through, in an actual series. So, yeah.
The psychic bacon.
Oh my gosh. The psychic. But yeah, so we'll dive into that. And then September and October, like we said, a lot of spooky stuff. Okay, and so I'll go ahead and announce what our Halloween episodes are going to be this year. So it's kind of like, it's not really a collab because we're part of the team, but like a different part episode with Shadow Walker Paranormal. So we are actually going to do a live podcast at a well-known North Carolina haunted hotspot, and it's a big one. It's one of like North Carolina's top haunted locations.
Not just North Carolina, but you know it across the entire United States.
Yeah, but we're not going to share it until we actually go there, because I don't know. I just don't want to, for whatever reason, say the location. I'm just getting warning not to.
Episode before we go, we probably would share it.
Yeah. But just know it's a location in North Carolina. It's well known, very haunted. So we'll do
a live episode talking about said location.
Yeah, and encounter stories at the actual location.
Yeah.
And then once we do that, we will we'll do live Instagram. So when we're actually there, you guys will know what the location is.
Yeah.
But we'll do lives from Shadow Walker Paranormal and from Hidden in the Shadows while we're investigating, as well as an actual investigation video. But that is going to be over on Shadow Walker Paranormal. That's going to be kind of like our first ever video over there, as well as our Halloween episode for Shadow Walker Paranormal. And then the actual Halloween episode will be having Mike and Megan on with us talking and sharing EVPs over the episode.
Yeah.
So,
Look forward to that.
Yeah, I'm excited about it because, you guys get to actually see us investigate and kind of see the before and after. So, yeah.
As always, you can catch our social medias at Hidden the Shadows Podcast on Instagram, Hidden the Shaw 6 on Twitter, Hidden the Podcast 2 on TikTok, or links to all our social media and all ways you listen to us at hiddentheshadowspodcast.com. As always, we'll catch your widows in the next one.
Yep.
This month